Sir for the banks from the Finance Minister. He says they're too slow to support the SMEs. Grant Robertson is back with us. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Adrian Orr said in front of, I think it was the committee, the Bridges Committee last week, he said banks need to be courageous. Is this all part of the same message? Is something going on here?
I just think I was referring specifically to the government-backed loan guarantee scheme where we're bearing 80% of the risk of those loans and the banks are bearing 20%. And I'd certainly had some feedback from people who'd been seeking the loans and they weren't receiving what they thought was the information about that scheme, where fairly obviously you'd expect banks to be more pragmatic. So really all I was saying was if you were a customer who'd perhaps gone into a bank a couple of weeks ago and they'd offered you something that looked pretty much like the status quo, go back, have another conversation. That scheme's fully up and running now, and we're just asking customers, banks, everyone in the scenario to sit down, have a pragmatic conversation and make use of the scheme that's there.
Do you have anything more than anecdotal? Victoria from ASB was on yesterday. She was saying they're throwing money out the door like there's no tomorrow.
Well, it's certainly true that banks are lending a lot of money at the moment, and it's obviously, the numbers, just like they are for the government, are so extraordinary in normal times. Billions of dollars going out the door. I'm talking here about a very particular product for a very particular group of people, and it's the people we've talked about a lot, Mike. It's aimed squarely at those small and medium enterprises, turnover up to 80 million, and so we want to make sure that scheme is operating well. But no doubt whatsoever, the banks have been handing money out all over the show, particularly around the mortgage deferral and interest-only type payments. I'm really focused here on that business lending end.
Talk to me about the state of the budget. In the budget, will we have forecasts that we are used to? In other words, next year we will spend this and we expect to grow by Y, or is that still guesswork?
Oh, look, that will be in the budget. It has to be, actually. The Public Finance Act obliges it to be there. I would suggest to you that the forecasts there, however, will be ones where you should have more scepticism than you normally would. That's no statement or judgment on the people doing the forecasts. It's just the reality of the uncertainty that we're living in the world. But no, all of that will be there as it normally is. What's a bit harder from our perspective is to be able to put the crystal ball out and say, well, where will we be this time next year? So we're going to have to leave ourselves a little bit of room to be able to respond and recover from COVID. But you'll see most of the normal things you see in the budget.
Is there more new money coming in the budget and talking about, loans are one thing, but a lot of people are saying what we need actually is cash to tie us over. Is there more new money coming?
You mean specifically for
anybody?
Look, well, there's going to be more money, absolutely. And I've said that from day one, that the responses that you've seen come through from us are first steps. What I'd also say is, we've obviously put a number of different schemes and programs out there, but I think you would have seen, Mike, we've been prepared to be pragmatic, we've been prepared to listen and shift and change, and we're going to continue to do that right through from now to the budget and beyond.
I was reading a piece from an historian in Britain who was talking about 1930s Britain, and what they did, apart from anything else, is cut taxes and allow businesses to get on with it. Would you consider, despite your political disposition, cutting taxes?
Well, certainly not in this budget, Mike, because this budget is about making sure that we continue to build up the support that we need for people, that we provide both individual, firm, household level support, but also look to the sectors that need our support. And so right now that's not on my agenda. As we go forward to how we stimulate the economy, there are a range of options available. And you're right, I'm a believer that, we need a strong public sector, but we also need a thriving private sector. We've got to get the balance of that right. And we'll make those decisions as we come through this budget and into future ones.
When will we get an official unemployment rate?
I believe that'll be when the Household Labour Force survey comes out, and I don't have that date in front of me, Mike, sorry, so I can't tell you that right now. I do know that for fairly obvious reasons, the Household Labour Force survey itself is quite difficult to undertake when you're in level 4, but I know they're still continuing with that work. I won't give a date because I'm not 100% sure about it.
The idea from one of the banks yesterday, a cash splash, they said it should be a bit targeted, but the idea of just giving people money to spend, is that off the table?
Oh, as I said, that question you just asked around taxes before, I think we've got to look at all the options for stimulating the economy, and that time comes as we move through this immediate response phase into the recovery space. That's been tried, like you mentioned, UK in the 30s. There were a remarkably large number of responses to the Depression and how to get out of it. And in New Zealand, obviously, we saw at that point the first Labour government whose focus really was on, construction, building and the creation of a really strong and robust welfare state. So things like, helicopter money, as it's sometimes called, is part of a potential package, but obviously it's got downsides as well because of, as you said in the question itself, it's not particularly targeted. So there are upsides and downsides to all of these options, and that's what we have to work through.
It's reported yesterday there's a couple of dairy processors partially owned by the Chinese. I don't know how much xenophobia was involved in that, but nevertheless they're essential industries. They've claimed the wage subsidy. Is there rorting going on, or is that all anecdotal?
Oh, look, you've got to remember that the criteria of the wage subsidy is a 30% loss in your revenue. And even if you're an essential business, you will have been working in a very different way. You, for instance, would have had your workforce spaced out by 2 metres. Some of your markets might have disappeared for a period of time. So, I can't judge on a particular case without having the details in front of me. But even if you're an essential business, you may well have had that downturn. What I can say with absolute certainty is we will chase down anybody who has rorted the system. I think I said it in one of my very first interviews with you, Mike, after this. If someone hasn't done it right, it's fraud, and we will chase them down.
You worried about inflation? They found some the other day and quite a bit of it.
Yeah, although a little bit backward-looking here. I don't think those numbers would attest today. I think you're right, it was up to around 2.5%. But actually, I think, there's pretty little inflation to find right now.
All right, appreciate your time as always. Grant Robertson, the Finance Minister. Still to come, the business of the movie theatres and where they go.